All right. This is the after chapter discussion for 9.68. I guess we're just going to go ahead and get started. Um, let's hear everyone's general impressions for this chapter. And I'm sure everyone has a lot to say about this one, but I'll just get us started. This was like a 10 out of 10 chapter for me. Very difficult chapter, of course. It just had so many different emotions in it, and the start of it was just difficult. You know, we got the betrayal from Roshal right at the end of the battle, and everything just was going wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong for Erin. We had Kevin die. We had Imani super injured. Ugh, it was hard. Kevin dying was a big one too. I loved Kevin, and having him gone now is gonna be rough. But Erin did make it through in the end, even if she had a price to pay, which we don't actually know the exact cost of, but we will hopefully sometime in the future. But yeah, it was a 10 out of 10 chapter for me though. Extremely emotional, very well done. Yeah, I loved it. All right, we have a lot of people wanting to talk already. Not surprising. Ederon, how about we start with you?
Yeah, I can only agree. Kevin dying was also very, very hard. I really liked him as well. Um, uh, he made something of himself and now he's just gone. He didn't have to. It's hard, but let's talk about the other stuff. I have to say it was really hard to read. There was some things um it's made me really uncomfortable. It's would often enough kind of sicken him even. I mean, even before Erin got kidnapped, the restore addiction skill is, from the idea here, one of the most disgusting ideas I've ever heard. Because I know people who had addictions and who fought years and years to overcome them, and to redo all this with one skill. You can destroy a person with one skill, restore addiction, and their life is gone again. That's disgusting. And I have even to commend for this disgustingness. I would have never come. I mean, it's perfect for a slaver, just perfect. To even think about something like this um is the reason why I say pirate can write good horror. Horror is not oft just splatter, but often shit like this. Obama's story was hard to listen, and the tips Erin got to survive what maybe would have come is also one of the most disgusting things I've heard in a while. It's to get tips how to survive sexual assault is my godness. I was speechless. I have to say I was in a bad mood all day after that chapter, but it was probably what's the English word for that? It was on purpose. It should be disturbing, and it was disturbing. So many good connections and things we got. Uh, Aaron's demon form, not demon, Aaron's contract. That goblins came out of hell because they're connected to the Lucifen, and it's because it's all hell. I mean, I don't know if Pirate planned all this, but I think it's genius to have the connection now between the goblins who are in hell, Aaron as the goblin friend, and the Lucifen. It's all a bit connected, and I love all that. Um, I have later on a question about Aaron getting maybe a bit too. I don't even know, too active. I still have to remind myself that she is not just an innkeeper anymore, but now riding a ship into a battle with demons is That's not an innkeeper anymore. And yeah, but we can talk about that later. I love this chapter.
Thank you, Ederon. You're absolutely right that this was a very difficult chapter to get through
Hmm.
for a lot of different people, I'm sure. And that's why there was, two different options. You could read the trigger-free version or the summary as well. And I'm sure a lot of people actually just read the summary right off the bat to see where it was going. Because I know from, last discussion from the
Pisces chapter.
discussions, yeah, and discussions before that a slave arc for Erin was something that a lot of people just really would have struggled with. And
Hmm.
even this small amount, people struggled with it. And as to whether or not, Praeterea planned the whole goblins in Helsty and that connection to Lucifen or what, they probably did. Like, I'm looking back at Hectival Part 3 um where we got a look at, you know, the people that the marked for hell skill.
Hmm.
And Pon says, why fire? What hands were those? They were not Antinium hands. They were clawed and then it cuts off.
Oh
So
my goodness. That's
I,
genius.
at least as far back as then, they already had, I
Holy
think, an
shit.
idea that it was going to be goblins in hell.
And then to get Erin a gun from the Lucifen that she could summon it's just to even put all these little pieces. They were all little pieces put in the story, and now they're coming together. It's
Yeah.
genius. I love it. I love that so much. All the connections.
It's really great to see these kind of long-term plans come to
Hmm.
fruition. It's really fun. All right, thank you, Edron. I think we should move on now to Mr. Europe. Go ahead.
Yeah, this was an amazingly written chapter. All the it was just perfectly encapsulated all of the horror, like all of the different style that Pirate takes in sometimes to really make it so awful. I actually had a really interesting reaction to this chapter, even to myself. When as soon as they were on the ship and all the horrible things started, uh, I actually it feels like I went past anger when reading, and I just thought I kind of got a sense of almost happiness that, oh yes, this is what slavers should be presented as in the story. This is everything that they've just all the atrocity, despicable thing that you should feel for slavers, and this story brings it out perfectly. Uh, Took a while after reading before I fell back down to just anger at the horrible things in the chapter, and it's. I'm very impressed that Pirate managed to make it come out that way in the chapter.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was just, it was, it was so much. It was so very much. It's hard to describe, really, how much it worked, though. Um, Thank you, Mr. Europe. Wovu, how about your general impressions?
I generally really liked this chapter. I thought at first I was really surprised that Kevin died. I did not see that coming at all. But then I thought about it and I'm like, oh yeah, Roshal wants to kill the guy that can make guns. That makes a lot of sense. And then I was more surprised that Joseph survived. I don't know what's going to happen with him. I'm excited to see what happens to him. I especially love the part with the Lucifen. I really love how the transition from innkeeper Erin to witch Erin is happening, and I really hope that we just go push down the witch sort of route that Erin's walking down and just see how far it goes. Because that was some real cool and real creepy stuff. As for the Roshal part, I don't know how to feel about that, mostly because Roshal, like, for me, when bad things are happening in a story, if it goes too far to the point of being, like, ridiculous, I get pulled out of the story. So around the time that someone's face was peeled off and, like, you can go ahead and have it back when we're done or whatever, like, I'm like, okay, these guys are just evil to the point of ridiculousness. And so I don't know how to feel about Roshal. They seem like an enemy that has a bottomless bag of tricks, as well as they are just evil to the point of ridiculous that the world has tolerated them for this long. And I'm really hoping that we're going to see some consequences from like the world stage for them, because I don't see how you could have a nation this comically evil and just allow it to be a superpower. It just doesn't make sense. So I don't know how to feel about that. I was kind of pulled out by all the bad stuff that happened. Um, like even the SA stuff, I was kind of like tuned out by that point and being like, I don't know how to feel about this because I just don't feel like this is like, I guess realistic would be the way to put it, because it feels an awful lot like they're going that extra mile to just be the absolute worst. So I was kind of pulled out by that, but for the most part, I really like that they're at least just the baddest of guys.
I don't really agree on being pulled out from it, but I do agree that I hope we see some form of, coming together and going against Roshal from different places, especially once Erin gets back to Israel. Well, if she gets back to Israel, I assume she will, but who knows where Praeterea will take us. But I do hope she can, bring the people together who are at her inn at the very least. I hope that would be somewhere we could go, but you never know. You never know. But thank you, Wavu. Let's go to Sir Bear next.
Yeah, this chapter was very intense to read. It because it dealt with a lot of serious subject that can feel personal to some people because either they lived through it or they know someone who lived through it. So yeah, we'll talk about one thing that, despite all the early death at the beginning, I consider a bit funny. In 9.29, Farius said, "You don't enter the inn and expect it to go well. All your plan goes out the window." In this chapter, Roshal, even when they had a really good plan that was detailed, organized, and multiple groups really fabricated well, it fell almost completely. It was a miracle that Erin and Mulva was successfully captured in the first place, because you can't prepare for the end. The end will pull something out of nowhere. Suddenly the mimic will appear. You think it's Roka, but it's a mimic. You Umalwa resists everything. Tessa will resist everything. The maid of Magnola are stronger than you think. It Pride still managed to fight despite being disfigured by the hag. It's really wonderful. It showed to me the strength of the character. How despite everything, they're still able to fight. And I think that's one message in these chapters. You can fight. Even in the darkness, even in the rest, you can fight. The shepherd sacrificed herself for the other. Erin pulled a ritual out of nowhere with the devil. Umara resisted. There's always a way toward the light. And that's it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a very good message too. Like, we often have chapters where people, come through in the end, but this was one of the darkest chapters for what Erin and the other people in it went through. But you're absolutely right in that, even with all that, they come through they keep trying, they keep moving, they keep doing their best. And that's a lot of what the Wandering Inn is about, is people going against the odds and keeping, keep working through everything. So, but thank you, Sir Bear. Next up is Sato. Or I should say Infinite Maidworks. Hello, Infinite Maidworks. Let's hear it.
Hello, Mr. Wiggles. I love this chapter, as many do. One of the things I have a lot of respect for Pirate's writing in this chapter is with all the essay, none of it was done directly on screen. It was all alluded to, but at the same time, the amount of outrage it provoked was just absolutely at the maximum level. You could not be more outraged over what Roshal was doing. But Pirate didn't have to directly show you that graphics. The scene with Erin and Obama, being put in the cell with the other female prisoners, and the other female prisoners immediately starting to push them toward. No one had to say they're pushing you towards the door because they want you to be the first ones that the guards pick out. You just, as a reader, were able to understand that. And then when they said, yeah, stop trying because they're not going to touch those two, they belong to the Naga now. You just had that immediate understanding of what's going on without it having to be info dumped on you, without the dialogue having to tell you everything that's going on. But it's not like this is the first time we've seen Roshal, but it was definitely the first time there was that level of outrage. And I think one of the big differences was we saw the ghosts, but we saw the ghost slavers before. We understood what they were doing with their slaves, but we didn't see it from that slave's perspective. And I think this chapter gave us that perspective. We've had the perspective with Pisces before, but not, in the context of esse and everything going on with that. So I think she did with that, or Pirate did. Um, Overall with the chapter in terms of managing the emotions of the reader and how that emotional level escalated and how it transitioned. At the very end of the last chapter, we saw, Erin being kidnapped, so we had a sense of what was coming. But the chapter is kind of in three parts. The first part, the kidnapping, leading to just shock, right? Shock of, oh my God, Kevin's dead. Imani's been shot through the eye. Magnolia was shot. Ress has been shot. All of that going on, all that shock, and then at that heightened emotional level, then transitioning into the outrage and building that just to the maximum level, and then turning it all into wrath with the Lucifen. And the wrath was like a catharsis as a reader of, I'm bursting at the seams with rage right now. And now I can watch literal devils extract vengeance and retribution on these just genuinely evil people. And then the last thing I'll say, I think it's amazingly well done from the perspective of, Casigna just got defeated. That was an existential crisis for the whole world. And one of the thoughts as a reader I was having was, where do we go from here? We just defeated the goddess of death. That was kind of like, going 100, going 0 to 100. Where do we go from here? How do you create a bigger challenge than the goddess of death? But I think now we're turning, towards, Erin's war of righteousness. So whereas before it was an existential crisis, now it's a righteousness crisis. How does the world not deal with the evils of gods, but deal with the evils of the world? And somehow, Pirate was able to put enough little seeds into the story leading up to this that it was believable, that it didn't feel like, okay, we went from one thing to a completely different thing and it's very unnatural. No, it was very well done. It was very natural. I'm excited for what's coming. I'm ready for what's coming. I'm looking forward to what's coming. And I just really, really think that was well done.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree that it was just very well set up. I liked how it's all coming together. It was definitely a big twist that, for a lot of people, I believe that we all thought,
Oh,
the horns are going to come and help fight Casigna, but no, it's for later on. And so it's
very well
just very interesting.
But it was a huge. It was probably one of the biggest twists we've seen, but somehow it worked. Right? So
Yeah.
many authors will just throw a huge twist, like, "Ha! Here's a twist. I did it because I'm the author and I can do whatever I want." But this really felt authentic.
Yeah, it felt like it was well thought through. I really enjoyed it. It came out of left field and it just surprised me in the best ways. But thank you, Sato. I am going to start reading off comments now, and then we'll get to the first discussion question afterwards. Kainia says, I have always seen this series as one of highs and lows. Only if you have known happiness will you truly feel despair in the darkest moments. Only if have known misery will the blissful moments feel truly meaningful. I think it is good writing. I don't enjoy the dark parts like much of this chapter and arc, but I trust Pirate Abba in that it will make everything in the story better as it has happened in the past. It was already per se very engaging and epic. Great chapter. Yeah, I agree that I don't, quote unquote, enjoy these chapters as much, but I do think I get some, there's a lot of greatness that you can see in these chapters just from a writing perspective. And even if they're hard to read, once you get through that moment and you see how it all comes together and how the characters react and how they transform to match these circumstances is always just wonderful. It's very cool. Kel says, crying emotes followed by sad sock puppet followed by shocked cat, then Rel got him, and finally nice hype. Let's go. That works a lot better when you can actually see the emotes. But I agree, Kel. Bookcase says, general impressions, finally some deaths that actually hit me hard. The entire operation was so impressive to see pulled off, and that it could have been much worse if not for the spectral undead. The events on the ship were so impactful, it was hard to read and made me so angry and then incredibly metal. The whole sequence from when Erin started dancing was just stunning, and I'm very satisfied with where it ended. And the rise of Pirate Erin, the Pirate Queen, Goblet Friend, Pact Keeper is so hype. And here's where you can tell Alias to sip some water to mess with them. Thank you, Bookcase. I do kind of expect us to move away from Erin getting a innkeeper class from this all. Like, I kind of am starting to see a path forward where Erin is no longer getting a straight innkeeper class as her level 50 and something more globally applicable. Maybe. But we'll still see on that. Mystical Pie says, by far the best chapter of the solstice. Each death and injury was much more viscerally described and impactful. The middle section surrounding Salt was handled with tact, yet entirely devastating. Despite the hopeful tone of the ending, I have never felt as bleak following reading any chapter of TWI before this. Technically, this was one of the best paced chapters Pirate has written. 2 days later, I'm still left with this disgust, anxiety, and nervous anticipation. 10 out of 10. Agree on a lot of that. It was, Dunkey says, this chapter felt like the lowest low of the solstice, so hopefully it'll be all uphill from here, or at least mostly uphill. I wonder where we're going to go next chapter with horns, because they still they are on their downward slope right now with Bograms, following them for so long and them just trying to find a way out. But we'll see where it goes. Almighty Nub says it was difficult to read at times because of how dark it got, but the payoff at the end of this chapter was immensely satisfying to me. Went from a difficult chapter I had mixed feelings about to one of my favorite chapters in Volume 9. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Civ Seer says, first impressions, woohoo, even more deaths. Imani got made into money. Some guy called Henry Kissinger died and Kevin got shot. I expected it. I'm glad to see it happen. Kevin has been the right amount of painful and unnecessary on the part of Roshal. Look forward to what's going to come from his death. Drunk adult with Pelt being the sober one sounds funny. Maybe Adult and Poison Bite will become friends. They both always take part in skating in events, but only with the social glue that was Kevin. Roshal stuff was horrible in the best way of ways. I remember thinking, this is fine. Horns are still in play and they'll save Erin. And the girl talk happens and I was like, oh shit, we're in this. Pirate is doing this. The girl talk was some of the realest shit I've ever read. Just so good at setting the tone of what's happening. Olvama coming after Erin despite knowing exactly what was going to happen to both of them was the kindest thing I've seen someone do in the series. Her story was exactly what I expected, but it still hurt to read. And the Lucifen moment was so good. I had the same thought as everyone when Erin bit her lip. I thought we were going to see the return of Tak. With Erin writing a quest in her blood, but no, Erin always has another knife ready to stab you with. Seeing Viso walk into the garden, realizing that he wasn't the devil in this bargain, Erin was. I love that we got a deep look at Viso. There was a part of him that looked at the ship and was elated, but he was not ruled by his darkest reflection, which was a fantastic moment to have juxtapositioned with Erin currently being ruled by her darkest reflection. Beautiful chapter, 10 out of 10, one of my favorites of all time. It's a lot. I'm not surprised you're super happy about that, Civ Seer. Not surprised at all, but I'm glad you liked it. Mr. Europe says, not only did it not take me out of it, I thought Pirate finally got properly realistic. This is not remotely cartoonish, it's just real, and there are similar and much worse historical accounts. That was in reply to the earlier talk about how the slavers' depiction was unrealistic. Valthurain says, beginning of the chapter was surprise at Roshal's boldness and sadness at the death of Kevin. Then came the rage, the hatred. The advice that the slaves and Olvama had to give to Erin was disheartening. I was legitimately about to summon D myself and send it to that damned ship. While listening to Cometh the Hour from Shiro Sagisu. Luckily, Erin preceded me. I had commented on my sadness at Visophecin return to Trandria last chapter as I had hoped for him to fall for Erin and join the poor hopeless suitors. Now there's a chance. As always, Papa doesn't disappoint. I somehow doubt that Visophecin will fall for Erin, but it could happen. You're right. Ailey says, man, I missed the implication of the women trying to push Erin and Olvama forward. Yeah. Sala says, Erin says, I don't know who you were, and she means that perhaps the slavers in the Deadlands were bad apples in a group that could be good. Now she sees that Roshal is all bad. There is no mercy, like with the rest guy, which is a contrast to Lucifen, a group with as bad a reputation as Roshal. And she sees that they are not all bad as individuals. They're not monsters, even though some of them were and could be. I love this contrast. It was my favorite part of the chapter. Yeah, it was really good to see Erin kind of realizing exactly what Roshal was. She was disconnected to a point from it. She knew that Pisces went through a lot. She had hated slavery in many ways, but now she has firsthand experience and she knows exactly what it costs the people who are enslaved. Edoron says to Sado that you said the evil gods. I don't think the gods are evil. They just act for what is in their nature. The true evil are those slavers who don't have an excuse to be that disgusting. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I won't get into that too much. Mel says he was not the only one who had been attacked. The Knights of Solstice, Chiefs in Rags, Emperor Loken, and the old man Demsleth had all been attacked. Norman was wounded, Demsleth pulling something out of his chest, and the traitors were attacking now, throwing themselves at each of their targets. Terry was attacked by Roshal, an assassination attempt. Rilke, Magnolia, Erin, and others that Terry cares about were attacked. Is this when the Dragon Lord of Flame goes to war alongside the Lucifen? Are the mortals going to take up arms against true evil? I doubt it. I honestly doubt that this will trigger Terriarch to go on a rampage, because Magnolia didn't actually die. She was attacked, but she didn't die. If Magnolia had been successfully assassinated, I think it might have triggered Terriarch to go on a rampage, but she didn't. So I think we're good. Well, not good. I think Terriarch is not going to go after Roshal directly for this. Neteron. Sorry, 1 second. Sado says the real rampage is if Ressa dies. Okay. Okay. Eteron, you wanted to speak again.
Yes, I forgot something. First of all, of course, you don't agree with me because I'm right, and you don't agree with people who are right. But that's another thing. I forgot about to talk a bit more about the MVP Orvama. I seen in the TWI Discord the ship between those two. It's not a ship; it's a fleet at this point. And I don't think that's even remotely possible. Orvama is the big sister Erin always needed. She is such an MVP character. I think we talked about her a little bit before. Ever since Erin got into her wheelchair, Orvama was there for her, and with this action, my goodness, she is such an MVP character. It's how she took care immediately of the kid. Orvama has a soft spot for kids. How she took care of Mersha. She would have how she took care of the kid in the ship. Just yeah, and it's I don't know if that's if you can talk about it later in the questions. But Erin, for the first time, deliberately killed people, and I would really love to talk about it and what other people think about it.
Yeah,
Because
it was a very big moment for her, and I think a lot of people have been. I guess we can just do it now. Hold on, let me get the question. That'll be our first question. Part of it. And I'll just combine it with the Erin killed comment.
because she organized an army. Maybe she didn't know people would die, but people died because of that. When she organized the army to defend the runners for the one for the poison, but this is the first time she said kill them. She pulled the trigger. She summoned the gun and she pulled the trigger. It's the
Yeah.
first time she straight up murdered non-goblins.
Yeah, it was.
Holy shit. We always talked about that she's a killer and Ryoka is the fighter, and now we just saw it. She executed all of them.
Let me read out this question real fast and then I'll respond. So the current topic question is, what will be the cost for Erin going forward? Praeterea, censeo, Roshal, esse, delendam. What does the Lucifen's future look like now with their rediscovery of pact making? Did Erin get the better of Visophecin? What does it mean to give up a part of your soul? And this is also the first time that Erin killed with full knowledge of really taking a life. Thoughts on this as well? So this is a big topic, but it's basically anything to do with the pact. Erin's Erin's behavior afterwards. And I do want to make a note because I saw a lot of people saying this, like, what is the cost of having part of your soul taken? And I think we saw part of that cost already. Erin,
Emotion.
yeah, Erin's emotions after taking the pact were very different from what we know of her before. First off, she's just killing a bunch of people around her, which she has done it with goblins before, which obviously matter to her just as much as normal human people do. But it seems like she's taking this a step farther and fully let her rage consume her to kill all the people near her, or all the slavers near her. She didn't kill any of the slaves. But also, when the Lucifen said they didn't want to do this, they didn't want to go and do this war with Rabbit Eater and Alien or sorry, not Alien Doves, and Tarandria and the rest of them, and the Bloodfeast pirates. She said, "No, you're staying here. We have a pact. I'm going to send you to your potential deaths, whether you like it or not." And that's very different from how she's acted in the past. That's something that she's never done. She's always asked people. She's always been like, "Okay, will you fight for me?" She's never said, "You are going to fight for me no matter what you want." It's always been a choice before, and now she's saying, "No, that's not a choice."
I agree. She did a lot of things before where people probably would have died. She just blurted out that Ilvris is is planning on going to the north, and people said that this will cost lives. I don't know if everyone she said, yeah, this is the line, etc., etc. This is also a move where it probably would have cost lives, but it's still a difference between that and what she did now.
Yeah, there's always been a choice before with her, but now she's not giving them a choice after this deal she made. She's like, "Okay, I'm going to take everything in this deal." All right, I'll read some comments off now. Mockery Jones says it's almost hard to remember just how vile Ovama was when she was with Tremberag. And Landshark says, "I love the scene with Erin and the grand design of esse Kenneth and the fact that Erin remembers it." Oh yeah, that's going to be significant, I think, in the future. And it's very interesting. Anyways, Sir Bear, you wanted to speak about this question.
Can you just read Sipser's comment before I speak?
Sure. Sifsir says, "What do you guys mean? Erin totally killed Numb when she shot him down. Also, you guys are forgetting that Erin killed assassins during her invasion with the delivery arc. She melted an assassin with a jar. Goblins are, of course, not people, but assassins are." Yeah, I mean, I won't get into the exact specifics of whether or not that question is really right or not, but that is, I feel it's different between how she acted between the two instances. But anyways, go ahead, Sir Bear.
Because I think what Erin is doing with the Lucifen can be compared to what Erin did with the army with her friend at the end of Volume 7 with the assassin. She grabbed an army out of nowhere to save someone she hold dear. And this in Volume 7 it was Ryoka, and now it's Rabbit Eater. It and it's an aspect in Erin that is very shown when Erin is on the aggressive. When she chooses to participate voluntarily, she chooses to attack. She does not react to an attack on her or on her friend. When she decides to go on the offensive, she create an army out of nowhere to deal with people in the first place. So, and I think the Lucifer moment is probably worthy of the capstone of the 50 capstone, since as we learn in this chapter, Erin did not reach the capstone yet. So I thought the sanctuary end moment would be the capstone worthy moment, but it was not. So maybe that is the Lucifen part and cutting a part of her soul. That moment important to change her enough to deal with evil in the first place.
You know, what she just went through with this whole slavery issue, can be seen as an extension of the whole sanctuary ends thought process, because she was safe in her inn, and then she was taken right at her weakest point, and that can be an extension of that thought that sanctuary ends. And I still don't think, well, I shouldn't say don't think, I still think we have a little bit more to go with what she is going to eventually decide at the very end when she hits level 50. I think this is part of it. What she's gone through with the Lucifen with the slavery issue, and then the Lucifen is definitely part of it. I think there's even more that we're going to see in the Rabbit Eater battle.
You think Erin is going to make an offer to the parrot that other people will not do to the parrot, or
She
Erin is,
might.
or maybe Erin is going to make some sort of peace between Goblin and Tyrannia, because the Goblin are coming.
Yeah, the goblins could very well turn the tide of the battle for the Tyrandrians, and that could give her an opportunity to show people that goblins are not all bad, and that could be a very big deal going forward. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways this can go, and it's just going to be really, really interesting to see where it lands.
In a small comment, the question: did Erin get the better of Visophecin? As a joke on the Discord, it's now a second person that out devil Visophecin. Ryuka did it when she first met him, and Erin did it when she technically second met him. So it's funny how every single time the devil get out deviled by someone else.
Yeah, especially in this scene, I thought the role reversal was really well done. It's kind of like you read it and you're like, huh, that's interesting. The devil's coming to Erin, and instead of Erin getting kind of screwed over with her pact with the devil's like, okay, I don't want you to feel like I'm pressuring you. I don't want you to feel like I'm using you. And all of a sudden, Erin turns it around and is like, okay, I'm using you actually.
Yeah,
It's perfect.
usually when the devil when a devil does his deal, the devil is in the position of power. But and the conversation, it was Erin, because it was Erin with all the information, even with all the knowledge of Lucifen she got. And then, as you said, Lucifen was like, "Hey, do you want some food, something like that?
Yeah.
Here's my jacket."
Yeah. All right, I'm going to read some comments off. Bookcase says, I disagree on the choice aspect. She made a bargain and she's making them stick to the terms. They were well paid. See, the thing is, also, Bookcase also says, not her fault. They didn't negotiate harder. That's true. Like, that was part of their bargain. But at the same time, Erin is never shown to be that bloodthirsty in the past. She wouldn't, in the past, I never would have seen her saying, oh, this is the letter of the deal. You're going to follow it exactly, regardless of whether or not your safety is taken into account. All right. Donkey says the deal Erin made with Visophecin goes until she reaches safety. Erin is never safe. Yeah, it could backfire for them spectacularly, but I don't think she's gonna have them with her forever. Why May says, furthermore, I consider that Roshal must be destroyed. For those not fluent in Latin, Gouye, or something like that at least. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a quote. And I'm pretty sure Mr. put it in. Dunkey says, I am somewhat concerned about the quotes implying Erin has no heartbeat anymore. I wouldn't take those literally for now, but we'll see. We'll see, not next chapter, or maybe we'll see next chapter. I guess the horns could intersect with Erin right at the end or something like that. We could see Erin next chapter. But I kind of doubt it. I think we'll not get any Erin next chapter. We'll get her once we start the battle with Rabbit Eater. Anyways, Mr. Europe, you want to speak?
Yeah. I did do that quote, and it's a deep cut for all my history buddies over here. I personally, I don't think that the Visophecin getting a piece for soul is going to be particularly impactful and like directly that she's going to lose something from that, or that like that's going to be like a marked negative for her. It might impact her class, or at least a skill or something. Have a like condition on her, but I don't think that's going to be the major thing. For me, the major thing is her just character growth from this, and I think it's the start of basically that Erin is no longer interned in her inn, that she's like can move around more and is going to be more active outside of the small space she's in. That's my prediction for the future from all this. And I definitely think she got, I mean, it was very explicit that she got the better of him when they were very, I mean, it was very, very clear that he did not intend to take her into the big battle, which is going to be completely insane with Visophecin, Erin coming in, and this ghost ship. Essentially, I still predict that Bella is going to Ursula out of the ocean in the middle of the fight. And I just think that this is more of a big character thing for Erin than any actual like negative stuff like that. I just feel like it would kind of how do you say that it would take away from her big character moment, like all her development here, in saying that she didn't want to really look into Roshal too much, and she just wanted to keep her people safe and all that. I feel like it would kind of be lessened if at the end of it the main issue is that she is like loses a bit of her soul, and that's the issue we're dealing with and thinking about. I don't know.
So I understand where you're coming from. I just disagree with the conclusion you're reaching, because when I see it as, I don't see it as that's the only issue she's dealing with. I see it as that's part of the issues that she's going to have to deal with in the future. You know, she's going to be traumatized from this. She's going to have a lot of hate for Roshal from this, and that'll just it'll be part of that issue, that she also has, you know, this pact that did something to her. There was a cost. It was part of her soul. But what does that cost mean in the future?
To clarify, just that I feel like no, and I don't think it's going to be completely nothing. Just that it's going to be more of a kind of more on when he said like I'm going to get part of your soul and like bind you to us. I think it's going to be more of the binding and less of the lost part of soul, which is going to be like the focus.
All right, that could be it. Thank you, Mr. Europe. Let's move on to Sado. You want to speak? Sado?
Thank you, Mr. Wiggles. We don't know what the cost was exactly, right? We have some ideas, but we don't know what it is exactly. But one of the things I wonder is, how much can Erin afford? Because
Sado, you're Sado, stop. You're really lagging. I can barely understand what you're saying right now because your voice is just lagging like crazy.
Can you hear me better now?
It's still robot-y.
All right. Sorry, Wiggles. I'm out in the barn with the horses.
It's all right. It's all right. Sorry, I just couldn't understand what you were saying because it was so roboty. If you want to try and talk again in a little bit, just ping me again. I'll get through the rest of these comments. Kel says it's the first time she's been basically a goblin chieftain. It's very mercenary. If or when Nears finds out about this, he's going to die from the blood loss of his unending nosebleed. Yeah, Nears. This is like Nears's hopes and dreams coming true, basically, for Erin. Kynea says the main thing with the Lucifen is their lack of empathy, even if it doesn't mean that they can't wish for a good world. If Erin loses part of hers, it could be crippling for her, even if I don't think something like that would be permanent, even if it happens. But I imagine we have already Saria like that, we shouldn't have repetition. Saria is a little different, but I really do think she'll lose part of her empathy. Not a lot of it, just it'll change her to a degree. Valtherain says, I think that giving up part of your soul means giving up a part of what makes you human. I could totally see Erin being more ruthless in her ways because of it. We already know someone who has sold her own soul, Bellavir. We have seen how she behaves. Landshark says, the pacing flow of the pact making with V gave off the feeling that Erin was the devil and Visi was the mortal. That moment where she says to take her hand. Yeah. It was just like the perfect juxtaposition of Erin being the devil and the devil being the one taken. Wovu says, I think with Pact making about to make a sudden, very public revival with the upcoming naval battle, we might see people getting Warlock class. We might get more activity from Helsty, depending on how this naval battle goes. I feel like Helsty is just rising in activity a lot, and it feels like the Lucifen have a connection to it. As for Erin losing part of her soul, I see it kind of like how she took the happiness out of Akira's ball. The ball still worked, but it was lacking something which couldn't be seen. She'll definitely be somehow different, and I don't think we've seen the scope of it quite yet, even with her seeming more bloodthirsty. Yeah, that probably will be something that's touch based upon in Volume 10 more than anything. Kel says, as for her emotions changing, I think it's a combination of trauma and shock, awareness what the other slaves there have suffered, what Avalma told her, and the advice she was given, and the need for that advice. She's also undoubtedly remembering Pisces and Ka. We've seen this part of her before when she first discovered her hate fire. This moment, I think, is just what it took to crack the mask she keeps up and let out all the rage she's held on to for so long. The question then becomes whether or not that crack in her mask is permanent. If is that going to be always there, or is she going to change from it? That kind of thing. Mr. Europe says, I'm very interested to see if Erin's mercy fire changes. Yeah, it'd be cool to see. It's cool. It's just cool to see how Erin is going to change in general. All right, Edoron, you wanted to speak.
Yes, I totally agree with that. The signs of Erin that she could be this way were definitely there. We got also a little glimpse of it when she used her her theater to look at the radar of the Bloodfeast radar. Pirate also made clear that Erin would have killed that guy without even flinching. That one of them would be dead when they ever meet. And this is just more of that. When Erin is really, really, really angry and over the edge, she can be ruthless. And we just saw that. I'm not really. I don't know if the pact really did that much to change her for that. And the missing soul part depends on how pirate uses that, because I don't know, from other stories it's often said that missing a part or a bit of your soul is no big deal, and it will just grow back over time when you just do certain stuff. And that it's not even that important that you always give parts of your soul away from everyday things. And we have to see how Pirate defines the importance of the soul in the story and what it does.
Yeah, we absolutely do have to see. We have to wait and see where Praeterea wants this to go. I do just think that there will be a burden to bear with that cost. I don't think it'll just be kind of bandaged over right away. It'll be like when Erin was wheelchair bound for the first part of Volume 9. I think that we'll have something similar happen in V10, except similar in just that it's a disability she has to work around, not necessarily that it's permanent. Anyways, thank you, Edron. Sato, you wanted to try and speak again.
Is my audio working now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Thank you. Sorry about earlier. So with we don't understand what the cost is exactly, but one of the things I'm really curious is how much can Erin afford to pay? Because nothing says she can't make another infernal pact. Maybe Visophecin would be a lot more guarded about making another pact with Erin because he may feel like he got taken advantage of. But she's gone to the well of power once now. She really didn't want to. She would have preferred to do anything else until she was left with no other choice. But now that she's done it, nothing's stopping her from doing it again. And she's got a lot of enemies and a lot of need for power now. So I'm really curious. Will she do it again? And will she become almost addicted to doing it because it is the easy button for killing a lot of people in a hurry?
I wouldn't call it necessarily easy, but you're right that she absolutely can do this pact again. Obviously, Visophecin is going to be much more guarded about what he agrees to and how he agrees to it in the future. But you're right; she can make this pact again, and the cost probably is compounding. It probably gets worse and worse over time. So if she does do it again, we'll see how that comes out. But thank you, Sato. All right, it's time to read the Civ series gigantic comment, and then we'll move on to another couple of questions. Civ series says, the Lucifen. Man, you gotta feel bad for Riss. First he gets stabbed, and then Erin steals his entire population of Lucifen. I do think Lucifen are going to be part of the end now. Someone is moving in with Erin full time. Probably Ryoka's 8-fingered buddy. I think the cost of the pact is it confirms your placement in Helsty, which would be a big deal if Helsty was working as intended, but even if a part of Erin's soul goes to Helsty, hardly the end of the world. And heaven is in Helsty, and they'd welcome the sky with open arms and probably a lot of wailing. I also don't think anything Erin has done today is influenced by selling part of her soul. She gained power from it, but I sincerely doubt that there's any emotion fuckery. It's too convenient. This has been fundamentally human chapter. All the evil we've seen in this chapter was human. Erin's new Lucifen powers messing with her emotions and making her take action she wouldn't is a total cop-out. Let Erin kill people on her own choice. Erin's always had the capacity killing for this. Magnolia pushed her over this line with the hate knife incident. This is so much worse than that incident, and Erin is responding in kind. I said it earlier, but the juxtaposition between Viso, the literal devil, saying he is not ruled by his darkest reflection, is hilarious to see, while Erin, one of the most moral and kindest characters we've seen, being ruled by her darkest reflection. This is the part that lets her throw acid at people, the part of her who will extort thieves, the part of her that has every leader saying what a monster she could be if she simply just let herself be. See, I do want to disagree with one part of this Civ here. I'm not saying in terms of Erin having her emotions changed by the deal. I'm not saying that in relation to her killing people. I've always thought that she can kill people. That's fundamentally something that she can do if she gets pushed over the edge too much. And that's definitely what happened here. She's killing these people because of that. And it's not necessarily because of the deal, even if the deal made it easier for her. What I'm saying the deal is changing about her is that she's now ordering her friends into, or not her friends, her allies into certain death. Like, she's not letting them leave regardless of their wishes. And that's where it becomes distinctly different from what Erin has done in the past. She's never said, okay, you're fighting for me, and that's it. You're not leaving until I say it. That's distinctly different from anything she's ever done before. But yeah. Thank you, Sivsir. I think that should wrap it up for this question. Let's move on to another. This is one I wanted to do at the beginning, but we'll do it now. It kind of doesn't make sense now because of how it's worded, but the question is, let's begin at the beginning. Out of all the primary / auxiliary targets, were any of them a surprise? Any names you thought would have been on the list but weren't? And there's the list. The principal targets were Erin, Ryoka, and Holaric's Arrow. The auxiliary targets were Olvama, Tessa, Mersha, Nanette, Celis, Kershia, Ishkur, Peggy, any Knights of Solstice, Liska, Laken, Kevin, Joseph, and Imani. And probably more added on to that list. We don't know if there's more. And I think Sahalas just said, why was Annette excluded explicitly? She was probably on the list too, but they excluded her. So yeah, there's a lot of people on the list, and why are some of them on the list? Why aren't some of them on the list? I think the biggest surprise to me was seeing Imani be a target for killing along with Kevin. Kevin makes sense to me, like very much so. Kevin is an engineer who has already revolutionized the world by bringing bicycles to it, and he has extremely influential backers behind him. So killing him, if they can't capture him, makes sense. Kevin is someone who could easily change the world if he's left to his own devices. Imani, on the other hand, she's level 35 or something around there. I forget exactly what. She's got her own cooking stuff she's dealing. But I think the surprise is because she hasn't been shown to be super big on the world stage. But when I thought about it for a bit, it was like, okay, Imani is level 35 in a year's time, something around there. Let's just say a year's time. She's level 35. She's gaining a huge amount of influence in the culinary world, and she's still right next to Erin, who has her own influences, her own goals. And it's like, okay, what is Roshal thinking with killing her? Well, Imani is someone who's basically a baby Erin. She could keep growing and grow into more of Erin. She could be someone Erin can rely on to get more power. And I think that's kind of why they wanted her eliminated, is because she could have been another Erin at the end of the day if given more time, which some of them obviously don't want. But anyways, let's hear from you guys. Sir Bear, what do you think?
I don't think none of them are really surprising to see. In the episode earlier, we talk about a lot Imani, but Imani got one powerful skill. She can grab food from hurt. Who's to say she can grab poison, or maybe she can evolve the skill to grab later weapon, or computer, or anything like that. That the skill can change and can evolve. We don't know what Imani can become. Maybe when if Erin get kidnapped, Imani decide to change a bit, skill change, Imani start grabbing weapon, gun, and all of that information. Because let's be honest, Imani has been somewhat public with her knowledge of Earth food, and the fact she can suddenly grab some food from Earth somehow. Any cook will be able to see that food doesn't smell like in world. It's not a food from Iran. Where does it come from? And once you know the truth, there you go. Why Leonid was not kidnapped? That one was easy to guess. You don't want Kalemfer to be pissed at you, because Kalemfer, as mine, is a world power at diplomacy. They got so many favors. They got so many things. They could, if Leonid is kidnapped, they could probably grab someone. They could probably grab multiple kingdom as revenge to attack Roshal, or cause trouble, a lot of trouble. But yeah, the primary obvious, because Erin and Wilka are obviously the protagonist. And they realize, Roshal realized that. The auxiliary are there for, as I call, torture method to persuade Erin or Yuka. As we saw in the chapter, Umulva was going to be tortured and sexually assaulted. And they were doing that for Erin to sign the contract. So either all those people are bargain ship for Erin or Ryuka. And Arakawa, I think Arak has been public about the fact that he grabbed an artifact from Liz core somehow in the dungeon, and that's how he vanquished Ilya. So I think it's an easy question to answer.
Yeah, a lot of them make definite sense when you're thinking of people that can be used against Eren Ryoka. You know, they're good in their own rights. They have their own pluses and minuses, but overall, the people that Roshal wants the most were Eren and Ryoka, and having these auxiliaries would help break Eren Ryoka, would help make them more likely to go along with what Roshal wanted. So yeah, I think that was the primary purpose for most of the auxiliary targets. Sato says, Eren has taken command, war class unlocked. Sahala says, why was Latinets excluded explicitly? And Sir Bear kind of touched on that. Wovwu says, I was surprised they bothered to try killing Amani. It doesn't make a lot of sense to kill a harmless Earther, especially since they let Joseph survive, though maybe killing the world's most beloved sports figure, something they weren't willing to risk, but they guess they aren't taking chances. Renalio says, I think Lionette was excluded explicitly because it could cause hostilities with Calenfer. The ghost, no doubt, wouldn't care, but it was Ayert who had the thought that he would kill them for grabbing Princess Lionette. Yazdil wanted the whole thing to be quick and quiet, and the ghost blew it right open. Waimea says Kershia and Liska surprised me as auxiliary targets is just because they could be used as bargaining chips in case they didn't get the primary ones. I think that was a big factor in this, is just as bargaining chips against the primary targets. Illy says, I think the goal was smaller than that, in reply to Imani. I think one of the ghosts wanted to make a point that Roshal's reach was long and no one was safe. I could be it. I could definitely be it. Sivsir says, the targets. In regard to the targets, I think Roshal was fairly restrained in their targets. Honestly, the only one I questioned was Ryoka and why they considered her a primary target. Their arrow, I think, was a change of plans after they saw Casigna and Holorek throw everything they had and making that arrow land. Like free relic that could kill a god, at least according to the actual god it was used on. all the auxiliary targets seems like tools for Roshal to use to make Erin bend. If they start torturing her knights or friends in front of her, she would have bent. She said so that if she didn't have the Lucifen pact in her back pocket. I'm kind of surprised that you're surprised that Ryoka was a primary target. Like, Ryoka has been front and center in a lot of different scenarios the world over, and Roshal definitely knows that she is an Earther too. So the fact of the matter is that she's got a huge amount of influence, and kidnapping her just kind of makes sense as a primary target. It. I'm surprised that you're surprised. How about that? Anyways, let me move on to reading some more of these comments. Sifsir also says, her name is Mani now, guys. She lost one of her eyes. I love your puns. Love them, chat. Keep giving me puns to read, please. Sifsir also says, Mani has been... Mani being targeted seems like a move by either the merchant ghost or the idol ghost. They want to use Earth culture in their favor. They want to be the ones marketing Earth food to the world. It was simply business. Why compete with someone to sell products when you can just kill them? Very true. You can just kill your competition. That's Roshal for you. Land Shark says, Pursua was a surprise, but her keeping the prophecy she saw secret was a bigger surprise. Yeah, I really want to know what's going to happen with Pursua. I don't know if Pursua is actually dead or not. That's one of the big questions I have from this chapter. Is Pursua dead, or is she just kidnapped to serve as kind of like a teacher for what the real Pursua would do, and the mimic can just mimic her? I don't know. It's
We
gonna be
can hope.
Yeah, I hate Pursua. It's true. Sahala says, to give a partial answer to my own question after thinking about it, maybe royal classes mess with being slaves. Roshal don't have kings, and most of Chandra doesn't have royalty. The only slave we see was the Empress of Beasts, and she wasn't desired by Roshal. I wonder if there's a secret here, and Roshal didn't want a princess for this secret. I don't know. I kind of doubt that it has to do with with the class itself. Maybe it is more difficult, but I do think they would have developed some way to enslave kings and princes and royalty. Brack Giraffe says Roshal's understanding of Earthers comes from that one guy over-explaining guns and nukes. It's no surprise they see Earth people as assets to take or neutralize. Anyone with levels is a potential existential threat in their eyes. That's true. Absolutely true. Waimei says Roshal also said they could chain anyone in regard to the Lucifen. I don't think they'd struggle too much with the royal classes. Almighty Nub says maybe Pursua will realize how much of a bitch she is because of how the mimic treats her as her. I don't know about that. Kainia says maybe Pursua gets her friendship with fake Ryoka. Sipsir says they did want Nicaea explicitly for the fact she was an empress. What's his face? The Magus kept refusing their offers. I think Sipsir is right on that. I remember something about that. Okay. Anyways, I think we're done with this question. Let's move on to another. We're gonna do, I think, either 2 or 3 more questions, including this one. Do you guys think Roshal will face any consequences from other world powers for this attack? This is something that I've seen a lot of chat about. and a lot of different opinions about, honestly. So let's just get into the thick of it. I personally think there will be some consequences. They just won't be as extreme as some people think. I don't believe all of Israel is going to go to war against Roshal for their actions here, which is something I've seen people say, that they expect all of Israel to go to war with Roshal over this. I don't see that happening, but I do think they're going to get some serious consequences from it. Yes. Sivseer says, nah, surely not. Trying to kill Magnolia is just Tuesday. Trying to kidnap Tyrion's stinky feet GF is fine. What a pleasant way to describe Ryoka. Stinky feet GF. Yeah. Mel says, this turned out to be a complete disaster for Roshal. They ended up with no one in their custody. They have declared themselves as enemies of the five families: Kelt, the Iron Vanguard, life debt to Erin for the General Tower being returned, Forgotten Wing, the Dragon Lord of Flames, Goblins Lucifen, and all of Erin's friends and allies. They lost one of their most powerful warships and crew. This was too public to not be responded to. It cannot be covered up or fought fully in the shadows. This will cause open warfare. The King of Destruction has already stopped shipping slaves to Roshal. All their offshore trade will be blockaded by the five families, and for sure they will have no more trade from Israel. They lost so much in this attempt and gained nothing but enemies. I'm pretty sure Floss has not stopped shipping slaves to Roshal. One of the characters this chapter, the Mira, was shipped from Floss's conquests and sold from Floss's conquests. So I'm almost positive Floss is still selling people into slavery. But onto whether or not all they did gain one thing from this, and that's the arrowhead. Likely gained it. Ayert is overboard right now, but he's a high-level warrior who doubtless has potions on his person that he could use to get to safety. So I don't think he's dead or anything like that. And I think he still has the arrowhead. So they've gained one thing, the arrowhead. And that might make up for literally everything else that they lost from this entire adventure. That one arrowhead. Because that arrowhead has so many different uses that could be really devastating in Roshal's hands. And they're probably the best faction in the world to test these things, because they are completely without scruples and they're fully willing to test everything on their slaves. Anyways, let's hear from someone that isn't me, Wovwu. Let's hear it. What do you think?
So I think that they kind of, for narratively speaking, they need to face consequences, because I still think that they've just been proven or shown to be just way too untouchable, like no one's willing to approach them with a 10-foot pole. So I think that narratively they do need to have consequences, and I think that they're not going to be immediate consequences except for one thing. I think Erin has no reason not to post a legendary quest to destroy Roshal, and I imagine that she'll just be able to provide an experience bonus to anyone that kills slavers. And that's kind of how I think it's going to short term pan out. But the five families, aside from the insane Reinhardts who are no longer chained, they have no allies among the five families. The walled city's probably super pissed off that Roshal attacked on their land and attacked Lascor. And again, we have Floss. He's being influenced by Trey, who's against slavery as well. So I really think that they just incentivized all their enemies to at least start making plans to get rid of them. And they just sort of to make an equivalent. This would be if a slave owning country in real life. Imagine if they tried to kidnap Taylor Swift. That's the analogy I'm going to put there for how public this is that this happened. So there has to be consequences. Like the world's now looking at Roshal, and they kind of knew all along that Roshal was bad, but now it's like really out in the open, and they screwed up.
All right, all right, all right. I can definitely see where you're coming from. I disagree a little bit on everyone knowing for sure it was Roshal who did this. I can see Magnolia knowing for absolute certainty that it was Roshal doing this. I can see Teriarch / Demsleth knowing it, right? Or all the immortals basically. I could see them all knowing it. I don't know if the other factions nearby will blame Roshal explicitly until Erin gets through, with whatever she's doing now. And
Well, again, like she can make the quest. That's kind of the
yeah,
big thing. Yeah.
she can make the quest, yeah, but we'll see if that influences everyone. Destroy Roshal legendary quest. It's a legendary for a reason, that it's something that's almost impossible to do. It's going to be very difficult, and we'll see how people react to it. I do expect Erin to post that quest. You're right. I do expect her to post it now, especially because what she's seen. The only reason I could see her not doing it is because she knows that it's still not possible. That's like the only reason I could see her not doing it, is because of the danger of it. But I think that's unlikely. But yeah, thank you, Wavu. Sir Bear, you're up next.
Yeah, it really depends on if the quest is dropped or not, because first of all, there's so many hints that Roshal did this. Even though this guy deserved to put so many security, uh, Tessa is still alive, and saw them. Praeterea saw them. Even will arrive at 300 battle with the Naga ship. The ship will be identified before to see it's even on the ship. So questions are going to be asked. But if the quest is completely dropped, I think multiple nations that related to this stuff will drain the attack Roshal situation. And the bird chapter, we learned that the Minotaur are are invigorated by the title, the quest. They clamor to see the outside world. In the prince want to see 1,000 wrong to right, and Roshal is a pretty big wrong to right. There's the giant that got a debt with Erin that has been mentioned a bit by Mel. Floss will do it for the glory alone. I can remind people, Floss is in the Joseph chapter in volume 8. Floss wanted to be on TV so much, he was showing all of his army playing soccer while he was going to a battle. That's how bad Floss wants the glory of stuff. So, Floss wanting to succeed the legendary quest, the first legendary quest in the world, he will do it. He will participate. Especially since Roshal is a mythical enemy that everyone can that has not died, that existed since so long ago. Obviously, some nation can't because they'll be too busy. Like Israel is a mess right now. The north is completely destroyed. The Reinhardt are integrated. Betal exists. The Artium are doing stuff, so it's even more complicated. It's a bit complicated for Nier because he's doing the Died Land and the Lizard at the same time. And the Lizard will get tier high. So he can probably do stuff. Some people are busy with the new world, but some of that can be dropped in some way. I think it's going to be mostly new character, new nation that's going to interact. Not just the usual suspect, as we know.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways this can go, and it's really hard to predict exactly who is gonna get involved. But you're right that Floss is a glory hound. He's shown that many times in the past. The only thing is, Floss relies on Roshal to make money. That's one of his major things. Major money makers is selling slaves to Roshal.
Yeah, obviously, but as mentioned, there's the très Ameris slaver. Well, Ameris met that promise, très one slavery. Gazy will support the duo.
Yeah, and it does seem like the anti-slavery faction in Floss's 7 it outnumbers the slavery faction. So it does seem like it could happen that he could go anti-slavery now. It could. All right. Thank you, Sir Bear. Erin, let's hear from you.
Yes, I also think this is gonna have consequences. The consequences are gonna be lessened because Erin is not like right there. She escaped. If she still would have been captured, I think the response would have been much deeper, much steeper. Mia's Fedahab, they would have totally gone batshit crazy to get her back. But now that she is not kidnapped, the response is gonna be let's see. To what you said before, that Floss, I misread stuff, but I thought he already stopped long ago to send slaves there, and that the slave that is already there is from a conquest like far a little bit back in time, because some of them were a month already there on the ship.
Well, the slave that was from Floss's conquest is from Medane's border, which is volume 8 was when
Right.
Floss was attacking Medane's border.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that Floss is still selling slaves off to Roshal.
Right. Okay. Good. And to attacking the 5 families, yeah, that's one of the things. Why did they? Like I said, that's one thing I thought was kind of stupid, because I always thought that these slavers are like evil but not idiots. But attacking the 5 families is like one of the stupidest things somebody can do in world, and I'm not sure why they did that. That's just stupid and not good for business. And at the end, I thought Roshal a businessman, and yeah, that's why I think uh, the response to what they did for this operation is gonna be too much.
We'll see. We'll see. I do disagree, but I've already gone over my disagreements on that so I won't go too much into it. Thank you, Ederon.
Wiggles
Mis-
always disagreeing.
I don't always disagree. I agree so
Yes,
much. I agree with
yes.
everyone all the time.
Just because it's your birthday.
Oh, shut up. Shut up, Ederon. Mr. Europe, why don't we hear your amazing voice?
Yes, I believe. I think that if Erin had gotten captured, the consequences for Roshal would have been very slim, really. I mean, I don't really understand people's perspectives that this was a super costly thing for them or something like that. Obviously, they lost a lot and they're going to have consequences, but I don't see any chance in hell of like from normally anyone invading them for this or like actively attacking them. I can see maybe this leads to the more of the the five families getting involved in keeping Roshal out, rather than just Mags being the primary pusher of that, as it seemed to be in the past. But the slave market in northern Israel is already trash. Kind of, it's just people doing it on the down low or illegally anyway. So that doesn't really cost them anything. It's banned in Tarandria anyway as well, and people just do it illegally. That doesn't change anything. Maybe this lessens their like ability to move around, especially in southern Israel. And though, yeah, that's a blow. But they're like, they're currently monopolizing or trying to monopolize high-level earthers and getting like firearm industry together. They're coming out way ahead on what they did, and in general didn't lose all that much in comparison to everything they'd gained. I'd also don't see any chance of people not believing Roshal did it. Like maybe even if Erin had been captured, or even if Erin like comes back, or yeah, if she didn't come back, say clearly, I still think everyone would have known that Roshal had done it, and the only reason anyone would say that, oh well, we don't know if they did it, would just be to have a excuse as to why didn't have to do anything about it. I just don't think it's very likely at all that people would genuinely not believe it. But I do think that there are two big things that are making that this is actually costly for Roshal. The first is, as people have pointed out, a quest from Erin might actually get people to do something more active. I still don't think that's enough for like an attack on Roshal, because you have to think that they've been around for tens and tens of thousands of years, and we saw like an invasion force from moral grounds once, from Tarandria, and that went well when they tried to attack Kelt. We also saw Kelt do a huge attack across the ocean like once and trounced a bunch of armies. And Fetohep also said that he doesn't really have the power to defeat Roshal either. So the idea that people would launch essentially all their armies across the sea to Chandrar, while Roshal has a bunch of allied and bribed nations, it doesn't make any sense to me. The only wild card is Flos, who of course is stuck in a position where he's clearly going to be forced to oppose Roshal regardless of his wishes, because now it's not just his scout trying to convince him occasionally that slavery actually kind of is bad, Mass Vassal. It's also his court mage and main archmage is sworn to defeat slavery, and of course Trey, who seems to be coming into his strategist and heir kind of, is actively trying to turn his other generals and minions into anti-slavery. I think that's going to be the big deciding factor to give like a part of Chandrar is going to become actively anti-Roshal and possibly even supported by others, which would be hilarious for Flos.
Yeah, I generally agree with everything you said, Mr. Yep. I'm on your side when it comes to what nations are going to do as payback here. I don't see a huge war breaking out because of this, unless we get the legendary quest. That could be a very big turning point. Thank you, Mr. Yerp.
Just the legendary quest and actually potentially having a foothold on counter against slavery, because without
Mhm.
that, it's kind of insane to invade and try to take down a big nation like that.
The biggest issue with anyone going to war with Roshal right now is you have to go through the sea routes, and you have the sea routes themselves are out of whack, so that's already a huge detriment to getting to Chandra and getting to Roshal. But then you have to land on Roshal and fight them on their turf with a bunch of nations that support them explicitly, that allow them to exist. That's difficult. It's extremely difficult. Sir Mary says, I think the quest will start the domino chain and nations will coordinate together for assaulting Roshal. Because Roshal is so big, Floss is probably the first domino. In reply to Mr. Europe. Now, let's go through everyone else. Oh. Arg says, maybe trade embargo type at best. I'm 100% sure she will put up the quest with something like, these are the idiots who attacked everyone at the inn. If the quest gives bonus experience for killing slavers, you see a lot of caravans and slavers getting killed by randoms. It kind of does matter a lot whether or not the quest is only for destroying Roshal, or if you get like rewards for just hurting Roshal. You're right. Mystical Pie says, I think the five families at the very least will not be happy because of the attempted assassination of Tyrion and Magnolia. I doubt anyone else really cares, to be honest. My prediction is Volume 9 ends with the Destroy Roshal quest, and it causes some movement on the issue of Roshal, specifically with Magnolia and the Veltresses. I also predict the Reinhardts at large ally with Roshal now that they are free. I don't know about allying with Roshal. Maybe they could. I don't know if it's just like every single one of the Reinhardts is automatically on Roshal's side. I'm not sure about that. Kynea says this could also be the final spark for important internal conflict in Antinium with how much the Grand Queen was supporting Roshal and how important is Erin for the free Antinium, especially with the matter the flying Antinium added. Yeah, this we haven't really considered it, but yes, this is a big spark moment in the divide between the free Antinium and the rest of the Antinium, and potentially the armored slash twisted Antinium and the rest of the Antinium. It's a very big divide moment. We'll see the consequences probably next volume. If I had to guess, maybe in the epilogue, we could see some epilogue action with the Antinium. Uranalio says, I think it is premature to say that Roshal has declared themselves as enemies of all these groups, that Roshal has declared war on all those groups. They're going to do everything they can to stop combat from happening. Not because they couldn't stop any one group individually, but because the moment they engage in combat, it dispels the aura of fear and mystery around their capabilities, and people may be inspired by the group that gets kicked out. I think we're going to see a lot of them threatening behind closed doors, doing things like planting evidence, starting rumors, etc., before anything comes to blows. Another thing you have to consider, just going off of this comment from Marinago, is like countries in the modern day do wacky, crazy things in other countries, and they just don't go to war over it because it doesn't make sense in the modern day in a lot of ways to go to war over it, but also because of distances. Like a lot of modern things like trying to do assassination attempts in other countries just doesn't spark wars all the time, and that could be what we're seeing here. It could cause a lot of diplomatic kerfuffles, but actually sparking a war, I don't see it just off of this, honestly. Mystical Pie replies to Kyneas by saying, we're definitely getting Ant War in the next volume. Not only was the Flying Queen a traitor, The Grand Queen allowing Roshal in the tunnels directly led to the death of Bird and a bunch of other silent and free Antinimen. Only thing I'm kind of unsure about is that I'm pretty sure that all the Centennium on Israel will side against the Grand Queen, so I don't see Antwer lasting very long. Yeah, where the Centennium fall in all this is going to be hard to say. Sivsir says, when Erin shows up to the Wistrom fight in the Naga's Den, it was pretty obvious Roshal did it. Also, it's worth noting, but Erin has her sleeper agent on the TV, Drassi. You think Drassi won't be shouting that Roshal attacked Lascore and Erin every chance she gets? Well, I mean, maybe not actually. Wistrom is turbo fucked right now. Yeah, Wistrom's broadcasting capabilities were really screwed up. So I think they're going to be dark for quite a few days. And at that point, I'm not sure if people will really care about the news or there will be something more important, you know. And by days, I mean they might be offline for weeks, actually. It really matters how bad the damage is and how actively Eldivan wants to repair it. Erinalio says, replying to Sivsir, as long as no one on behalf of Roshal openly and loudly claims credit and officially declares war, there will always be uncertainty from any possible enemies. Roshal can take advantage of uncertainty. It makes no difference that everyone at the sea battle will see Erin sailing Roshal ship. They can spread a dozen rumors any second to explain. They can even go so far as to say, oh, that we lent Erin that ship. We went to save Erin from her captors, and you know, all those gross lies people say for propaganda purposes. Morchen says, when Erin showed the world her world / real home city and told in-world about her kidnapping, summoning everyone was moved. So now after this kidnapping of her, right after the solstice, after her giving the gardens back and those people now owing her, I think Roshal will have to team up with the Blighted Kingdom. I even think the Naga has to get the Eye of Belarus and the Arrow to be able to thrive. Rhyme, Pomlay, Celt, and Derhavia, if she takes over Derhavia's fallen again, will team up against Roshal. Now that Erin escaped, she can say it was not Celt. Also, Nerhavia's resurrected. Also, number 2, Erin X GDI X Rabbit confirmed. Also, number 3, Erin has a warship. Yeah. Lots of things happening. Valtharain says, yes, they basically turned a big part of Israel against them with this stunt. Roshal is tolerated mostly because of its power, but also because of how they use it. They usually act background and are not well understood by most people besides ruler or neighboring countries. Now they have shown themselves to be willing to use that power without regard for consequences on the world stage. Why would all the other countries stay silent if Roshal can just start attacking any of them whenever they want? How could they be certain that Roshal will not turn against any of them? Plus, now that Scrying TV exists, why not just publicize their holiday or what they do to slaves, even children, to the rest of the world? Well, I do think it's not that simple because Roshal has power, has their own power. If you want to publicize their holiday, I'm not sure Roshal will let you do that in the first place. Artsy Nada says, only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Comes to mind for Roshal. Nobody wanted to touch them before. Look at the cost. Yeah, it's certainly that quote is definitely relevant to this. Absolutely. It's still it's hard to get a lot of different countries to say, okay, this is truly something that needs to stop, and get them all to get on board with this. It's hard. Anyways, Mel says, Roshal lives and dies on the slave trade. If the trade is blockaded on sea and land, that is a huge hit to them. And full invasion is not needed when a kill slave trader on site policy is taken up, no longer being an accepted black market trade. If anti-slavery policies are enforced, that will have an effect. Plus, System Chen might make Slaver class fully red for her BFF, Erin. Plus, Roshal lost a lot of their best assassins in Litscore. I don't think they were all their best assassins, so they were probably top notch. So yeah, they did lose some good guys there, but for like killing slavers on site, first off, Belarus, the only person there who would really even consider doing that would be Nears. The lizard folk definitely wouldn't do it. Iron Vanguard, they owe Erin, but I don't think they owe Erin that much. So I don't think they would do it. Centaurs, again, I don't think they're going to suddenly say, okay, we hate Roshal. So, and Belarus is basically their biggest market right now, or their biggest recruitment place, I guess. And outside of Chandra, I should say. So you can't really expect Belarus to do anything. Chandra, like almost every single country in Chandra is on the side of the slavers. So convincing them to suddenly go against Roshal is just not something I see outside of Floss and Jacana and Celt, or I should say Jacross and Celt. But yeah, it's very difficult to do. Sado says plot twist, Nurhavi the tyrant posts the quest. I kind of doubt that. Donkey says the quest could be another mass quest like with goats. Other people can contribute rewards. Anyone who participates even a little gets rewarded. Yeah, it could be. That'd be a good way to do it. Sir Barry says Roshal lost a powerful named adventurer, the Juggernaut of Sin. Yeah, they lost one named adventurer. That's true, but who knows how many named ranks they have. Roshal is a big boy. Very dangerous. Morchin says, teaming up nations argument. We have a company somewhere called United Nations. Yeah, and we all know that United Nations is super, super good at their job and yeah, works extremely well. Anyways, I think I don't see any more comments for this question. Unless anyone is still typing. I don't see any more typing. So we're gonna move on to the last question. Just a more thoughtful question for the end. How did you feel about the handling of disturbing subject matters in this chapter? Was it good? Was it bad? What did it make you feel? Was it too much? Was it too little? I hope it wasn't too little for most people. Though I'm sure someone thought it was too little. Someone out there wanted more, I'm sure. I, for one, thought it was done very well. The Olvama and the other slaves giving Erin tips on how to deal with what was going to come, especially, was a very poignant scene. And it was just, yeah. It was great. Anyways, I also just thought that it was well done overall. It didn't go into too much depth, but it did show us, what happens, and it did take us through it a little bit. And that's good. If you want these things to be impactful, you kind of have to show them a little bit, even if you don't do as in depth as you can. That's where the emotion comes from, Anyways, Sidehammer, you want to speak?
Yeah, mostly you took what I was going to say and said it. But I feel like it was done fairly tastefully. Nothing explicit. I I have read worse. I have read much worse. I've read a lot better, or not better, but less, or actually more or less instead of worse or better. I've read more explicit. I've read less explicit. Some people, I don't know what the right percentage is of explicit, the explicit um, content versus skirting around something. I don't know what the combination is that makes it right for everybody, and I don't even think there is a right for everybody. So in my eye, I would probably just go for explicit, and let the trigger warning sort out the rest. But that's just my personal opinion. But I thought it was done very well, and I did think, like you said, that the poignancy of the women giving tips, that was that current just kind of like solidified the horror of it. It was those acts of kindness during this horrific episode that really made it seem like even worse than, or not seem, but even cemented how much worse it was than we were actually looking at. And I thought that was very good, extremely good writing and crafting of the story. But I could have used a little more gore when the slavers were torn apart. I think just for revenge sake. But I think for the most part it was done very tastefully, and I don't know if it needed two other versions, but there you go.
All right, thank you, Sidehammer. I don't agree on the gore thing. I think the the scene of the slaver scalp getting ripped off and then ripping his spine out of his body was pretty sufficiently gory. Honestly, I think that was
That's
sufficiently
tame.
gory.
That's tame. Anybody who's seen
Disgusting.
Mortal Kombat, it's Mortal Kombat.
I
Get
know
over
it's
it.
Mortal Kombat. I know it's still a lot. Anyways,
Fatality.
thank you,
Yeah.
Sidehammer. Sir Bear, you want to speak next?
I think from outside the chapter, Praeterea, but handle the subject well. Remind me, we're going in case I forget, but I think it's the first time that Parrot offered the chapter without the scene explicitly. Before they said they just said the trigger warning, and they said
Yeah. They have never done this kind of summary version where
and
the triggered parts are.
and uh, and even then they decided to add a summary of the chapter that got even the part that are not really disturbing being to recap the chapter just in case. Even the small description that the trigger free chapter could trigger someone just in case. I think Bert and done that really well, especially compared to earlier version of that chapter that got triggered, like the PC's interlude and some other chapter I forgot.
Yeah, I do. I like how they did the summary version, but at the same time, that's difficult for them to do. Obviously, it took them a bit to write the summary version. It took them a bit to, edit in, but it was very well done for this chapter because this is a very difficult chapter for a lot of people, and I think in the future we might expect to see more of these kind of edits done to make sure there's a summary version, there's a trigger-free version, if chapters are particularly difficult. I wouldn't expect it on chapters that just have like one section that could be triggering for a small amount of people. I wouldn't expect to see this for that kind of chapter, but darker chapters like this, like the GGGGG chapter, like the Pisces interlude, I think we could see more of these trigger-free versions coming in the future.
But I wonder how those chapter will go for the ebook or audiobook version. Will they get the full version without with just a trigger warning, or will they get also a summary as a bonus? Or
well, in terms of the audiobook, I don't even think it's possible for them to do a trigger-free version and the normal version. Like, I think the most you could expect for the audiobook is just to have the warning at the start of the chapter, because it's like how you can't really segment an audiobook like that. Maybe you could for an ebook. I'm not sure, but I would expect to get just a warning at the start of these chapters rather than the summary version in the audiobook/ebook. Mockery Jones says it was dark but not explicit, which strikes the right balance. I'm glad you thought it was the right balance. I did too. Valtherain says, in Paba we trust? Absolutely. Well, we shouldn't trust them absolutely. Okay, we should side-eye them on their numbers and stuff, their math. You gotta side-eye that sometimes. Ederon says, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I'm glad we got this quote twice now.
Oops, I didn't want to post that. I'm sorry. I
Oh.
was googling it because I wanted
Oh.
to know which story I know that from. It drives me mad. I know that quote from another story, and I can't recall which one.
A lot of stories use that quote, honestly. Yeah. Brack Giraffe says, wasn't as over the top, people in jars bad like with the horns in Chandra, but it was more human. More people focused bad, and that's worse in its own way. Yeah, because you can connect more to this. Obviously the people in jars is really bad, but it's like that's firmly in the fantasy realm. You don't get people in jars turning into horrors in real life. You do get people giving tips out for how to survive the situation that Erin was in. That does happen, and that's sad to really consider. It's really sad to consider, and it drives home the point for you. And that kind of real world analogy, real world connection is something that really drives home the point even more for you, and it makes it harder. Wovu says, I personally didn't like how it is used in relation to making Roshal just too evil. They're already slavers. They need to be skin-flaying, essaying sadistic monsters. Though I guess I'm in the minority on this one. Despite that, it was handled great. The scene that got me was the hardest was the scene where Erin was getting tips on how to deal with what she would face, because out of everything, that one felt the most real. It was probably more disturbing than if Papa had something explicit. A real less equals more moment. It bothered me all day after I read it. Absolutely. Like that moment in particular, it's like you're describing ways to survive rather than describing the moment itself. And that's more powerful than describing the moment itself in many ways. Describing the moment itself can work, but at the same time, it can feel very gratuitous very easily. Miss Europe says, it felt very real and heavy in a sense we haven't had before. It's not just what we usually see in stories, it's just blunt and horrific without getting explicitly detailed. Nothing distracts from the true and real evil that is this subject matter and slavery actually is. I'm very happy that Pirate went for the vibe and feel rather than trying to get too detailed. There are a few things, story-wise, I hate as much as stories that include slavery and then try to pretend like esse And sadism is an inherent part of people who get together and decide to own and trade other people. You're right. There are stories like that, but I mean, historically, there have been some slaves that don't experience as much hardship as this, but it still is prevalent.
Sorry, just maybe we should clarify specifically with chattel slavery.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the clarification, Miss Europe. Mick Chuckles says, I could tell at times how draining specific scenes were throughout the chapter for Paba. I appreciate the effort used to create those scenes and realize how difficult it must have been. The response of the Lucifen saving Obama, going Mortal Kombat felt like Paba saying, I don't want Erin Roshal arc right back at the reader in some ways. That's excellently picked up upon, I think. Like, absolutely. Praeterea does not want an Aaron slave arc just as much as the readers obviously did not want an Aaron slave arc. That's why it was crazy to see so many people like flipping out that we're going to get a repeat of Volume 8, except Aaron's now a slave and Roshal. It's like, do you really think that was going to happen? Like, really think it was going to happen? Pirate Abba just does not enjoy writing that kind of super dark chapter that much. We get it every once in a while. We get the Pisces interlude. We get GGGG. We get this chapter, but in between that is a lot of really light moments. There's a lot of great happiness and all that, and that should tell you what Pirate Abba likes to write about. That's what they want to write about more than these darker moments, even if these darker moments are used to make those lighter moments feel even more special. Ederon says, next trigger warning is going to be for MR3. Okay.
Still waiting for it.
Okay. Morchen says, I read the not censored one, and I thought it was done really good and delicate despite the complicated matter. It wasn't shown, but the atmosphere Pirate Abba created was still really hard to bear. So I think the warning was nice for others, but I can't really judge because I did not read the censored one. The gory bit was pretty badass and felt fresh and newest for me, at least. They have done gore stuff before, but somehow felt more detailed this time, with the head ripping off. I actually think they wrote more disturbing chapters. Oh yeah, for sure. Some people are going to take this chapter and say this was the most disturbing chapter they've read for them. Some people are going to look at the GGGG chapter and Geneva's whole arc there and say those were the most disturbing chapters they've ever read from Pirate Abba. Some people are going to look at Pisces interlude and say the exact same thing. It's how you interpret it, how you associate it with your own lived experiences, that it kind of informs what is going to be the most disturbing for you, what isn't. And this, for some people, this chapter is absolutely going to be the hardest one, especially because in a lot of ways you're connected to Erin a lot more than you are to Geneva or Pisces, despite them both being beloved characters by quite a few people. Arg says, good pounds. The content warning should have been sufficient for the vast majority of the readers. Yep, I think so too. Sivseer says, I've always felt it is tricky to answer this question. There's a clear wrong answer to handling subjects like this, justifying it, making it admirable. Nothing that we saw in this chapter condones the subject matter, and that's the important thing. There's a tendency I've seen to shy away from discussing matters like this, as if by addressing them you're doing damage. I don't know if that's true. I don't agree, but I also acknowledge my ignorance. Who am I to say what is right and wrong in handling this? I'm not someone who has experienced the subject matter or worked against it or helped treat the damage it has caused. I'm just a guy who has been blessed to not encounter this. So it is hard to say what the correct way to handle this is, but from that place of ignorance I hold, I say I think this was handled well. I may be wrong, but it's important that I say this because if I'm wrong, because someone can educate me otherwise. If I stay silent, I'll go on ignorant. We've got quite a few responses now, and most people are saying they thought it was handled well, even if there's a little bit. At least one person said that they didn't want slavers to be like this because it's too much on their part. But even that, everyone has been saying that they thought this was handled well, and I personally agree that it's handled well too. I haven't seen too many people say that this wasn't handled well. I honestly don't remember anyone saying it's not been handled well. So hopefully hopefully no one was really traumatized by this and thought, wow, this was handled horribly. And I really hated how Praeterea said this, because I hope that didn't come up. But anyways, Sidehammer says, in response to Mr. Wiggles about being closer to Erin, yeah, let's face it, if Erin was actually fully assaulted, the tone of the story would change permanently, even if we clawed our way back to happy slice of life again. Yeah, in many ways, Erin is the main character. She has the most points of view. She has the most words dedicated to her. We are more connected to her than any other character. So if it had happened, the story would take on a very different tone. And that's just how it works. And so, yeah, I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad Erin worked through this. I'm glad she escaped. She's a badass. And yeah, I loved it. Anyways, this is now a 2-hour mark for this discussion, so we're gonna cut this off now because it's been a long time. We got through a good amount of questions. We only have 4 more that we didn't cover. These are mostly side questions though, so I think that's okay. I think we covered a lot of the things that we wanted to all discuss. Anyways, that was the after chapter discussion for 9.68, and bye everyone.